wisdom for today is relax. The word wisdom for today is relax. So I think I can speak on behalf of all of us that we always tend to be discouraged when we are not able to accomplish or achieve the objectives that we set for ourselves. And many times, it's good to aspire for greater things, but sometimes we think of things that are beyond human limitations, that are not feasibly possible, and we just force ourselves to try to accomplish those things. And we end up being discouraged, fearful of the future. We all need to have a realistic view of ourselves, right? We can't fix everybody's problems, right? We're not God. We have our limitations, we have our weaknesses. You can't be in more than one place at one time, and you can't do everything you want to. You can't spend money that you don't have. You need to learn to relax in your limitations. Anytime that you live outside of the limitations of your life, you are always going to be discouraged. And I feel like that is applicable to every aspect of your life. When you go beyond what you are capable of, when you push yourself too far, you will always end up being discouraged. It is easier to fill your schedule than it is to fulfill your schedule, right? It's easier to open the reminders app on your phone, put a bunch of objectives that you have for the day, but it's way harder to actually finish those objectives, right, for the day. It's always easier to get in than it is to get out. It's easier to make a promise than to keep a promise. It's always easier to get into debt than to get out of debt. Oftentimes, the primary signs of you overextending your limitations of your physical body, your mental, whatever it is, the Apostle Paul says in 2 Corinthians 4:7, we have this treasure from God, but we are like clay jars that hold treasure. This shows that the great power is from God, not from us. In other words, you and I need to know our own limitations. We need to recognize your warning signs when you're overextended and you realize that you're just a vessel fueled by God's power, right? The vessel in itself doesn't have any power. It's the power of God that is fueling you, that is strengthening you, that is allowing you to be strong and not be cracked, right? If you are a clay jar, it's very easy to break. Unless, the person who made you is careful with you, protects you, nurtures you, watches over you, then you won't crack, you won't break. But if you decide to go off on your own, you'll fall off the table, crack into a billion pieces, and now you have to waste your time fixing the damage that you caused yourself when you could have just relied on God's power. Our bodies are like clay jars. We're all a little cracked because we've all dropped here and there. We all have our weaknesses and we all disobey God at some point in our life. But God often puts his greatest gifts in the weakest people. And that gives us the opportunity to point back to him and say, that has to be God. That could have only happened through God's power. You as the vessel, you as the clay jar must realize that you are significant, you have value because of your creator, because of your maker, right? Not your own intelligence, your own wits, your own capabilities. It's the, dimensions. It's the capabilities that God has given you that made you the person that you are. Throughout history, God has used flawed instruments, flawed human beings to put his glory on display. Nothing would get done if God only used perfect people, right? Because there aren't any. There are no perfect people. You may think that it's best to hide your weaknesses, but God wants you to use them in your life. You first have to recognize and respect your limitations, and then based on those limitations, learn to depend on God even in those struggles. And then when you trust in God's power and not your own, that's when you will be able to accomplish the true purpose that he has for your life. And with that, may God bless this word.
Audio.